we have our own honest, great, fabulous crash daddy, accident reconstructionist from California. For those of you in California, Stephen Plourd. Stephen, tell everybody about yourself.
Well, I'm 70 years old. I've been doing accident reconstruction for more than 45 years. I started with the California Highway Patrol in 1979, and I worked as an investigator, primary focus on accident investigation and reconstruction for about 12 of those years. I was part of the California Highway Patrol MATE team, which is a multidisciplinary accident investigation team. And they're part of the team that gets all the high-profile cases, the big shots, the multiple death cases, the police officers involved, state employees involved, really sophisticated cases. And I was a part of that team for only a couple years before I had to retire with a knee injury. But then I became fully accredited as a reconstructionist from the Accreditation Commission for Traffic Accident Reconstruction. Been fully accredited for a little over 30 years. I'm a private investigator and licensed in California. I've been doing, as a highway patrolman, I personally responded and assisted with the investigation of more than 3,000 traffic accidents. These are hands-on. So when somebody says something about you don't have the experience or the background, I mean, I was there within minutes seeing every aspect of every case on, like I said, 3,000 cases.
Wow. See, that's why I wanted you to talk about yourself, because I couldn't tell people. I mean, this is like having you on the witness stand and
that's what I was going to say, counselor. I was going to say, judge, with that, we'd like to submit Mr. Plourd as an expert in this case, and then the judge would have to say yes. Stephen, Michael Bryant here. Is Plourd,
nice
is that how you pronounce your last name?
It's Plourd. It's French. Plourd.
Plourd. Ah, mais oui. My first name is spelled, obviously, Michel. So I'm just going to jump in Linda Kenny Bodden's first question. You've looked at this case, right? This is not new to you.
I haven't looked at it daily. Well, I did. I look at most of the experts and watch what they're doing, and I'm pretty familiar with some of the evidence, but I haven't seen the reports because I'm not privy to those. But from what I have seen and what I have heard, and also looking at that Murder in the Snow 5-part series, it really looks like there's some serious concerns of what really happened. And I'm not going to say one way or the other at this point, because I think it's up to the jury to decide. But I think the defense is putting on a tremendous case this time, just like they did the last time. And I'm really surprised that they did get a hung jury and a mistrial in the first trial. But we'll see what happens on this one.
Now, do you know about the ARCA people? Do you know of them or their reputation that the feds hired, which the judges won't allow the jury to know that they were independently hired by the Department of Justice?
I know who they are, and I've been to seminars for the last 35 years. So I probably met all these individuals. I mean, there's so many people at these seminars. I don't know everybody personally, but Judd Welcher, when he comes on next week, I know him very well, and he and I could talk at length. And I'm interested to see what he has to say about the mechanics of the injury and how things happen. Because I saw the expert from
Aperture.
Aperture.
Welcher's from Aperture too. That was Welcher needed that expert yesterday and the day before to testify so that he could change his timeline based on his report. So I want you to talk to him about the guy Burgess.
Getting into the navigational system and the tech stream data, that's really highly sophisticated stuff that's only been available for the last 4 or 5 years. And it's really a unique field in itself. And I understand it, but I like the evidence shows, there's 4 different experts coming up with different numbers within seconds. And that's the whole part of the case. When did he die? When did he get hit? When did he stop moving? How could he start moving when the vehicle's already been stopped and going? There's certain things that I see in that part of it that's really important. But what's really got me is the immediate investigation by the police, either the Canton police or the state police. As soon as they got a call from a 911 call and it said there's a body in the snow, They knew within minutes that it was a police officer either dead or dying. They knew it was in the front yard of another police officer. I would have closed the scene down completely, listening to what paramedics and other people say about Karen. She says something like, did I hit her? Did I hit him? Could I have hit him? Whatever that testimony really is, she would have been secluded. Her car would have been impounded right away because they pointed out that there was taillight damage right then and there. They would have taken pictures of it right then and there. The car would have been gone, not driven around for 12, 13 hours, 16 hours, or whatever it was, and then finally brought in by the police. And there's just so many things that just don't make sense in this case.
Stephen, let me ask you this. Generally, in a case in which there is a claim of vehicle versus pedestrian, what do you need to see as you're doing accident reconstruction to confirm that that kind of collision actually happened?
Well, from a reconstruction point of view, you got to look at the physical evidence. You got to look at the physical damage to the car. You got to look at the injuries. I was an emergency medical technician. I saw pedestrian accidents, car accidents within minutes of them happening, like I said. And I saw the injuries. I saw the interiors and the outside of the cars. What caused those injuries? I had a firsthand knowledge within minutes of it happening. So you have to look at the physical evidence. On a case like this, where you have taillight damage and you have a dent in the back, you got to look at the injuries. You got to look at the surrounding physical evidence around the ground. You know, the doctor who was talking about hitting the ground and getting a 1.5 to 2 inch laceration in the back of his head in the snow with grass, that just doesn't doesn't grasp my appeal. And then you have the forearm, which may be about the same height as the taillight of the Lexus. You don't get those type of injuries. And you got to look at those injuries, look at the taillight. Did that taillight really cause those injuries? In my opinion, no, it did not.
And that's what I see you just donated to seeing you. Everyone's fascinated with this discussion, by the way, Stephen. Stephen, tell us about the polycarbonate breaking on an arm and how does it shatter? So that, I think you just answered that question.
It's basically,
no way.
Does a forearm actually have the ability to shatter a polycarbonate lens like that? And if so, how does it happen?
In my opinion, I would say no. And what I don't know is when she backed up and hit the victim's Chevy Traverse, you can see that there was impact damage to the corner and the corner. I want to see what the other Traverse looks like, get the measurement of the Traverse, the taillight. That's what I think would cause that type of damage. Did she back into him and maybe cause some type of contact with the taillight? I don't think so. You don't get those the injuries are just not consistent with it. And the other defense expert was saying that because the arm is sticking out there, the taillight hits it, he's going to pivot around. He may fall on the ground, but I don't think he's going to hit the ground at a substantial speed or angle to cause a big laceration on his head, on the back of his head. Things just don't make sense.
How about the car accidents that you've had? And we have a lot of other questions that are coming in for you. The questions you had, the medical examiner here testified that there's no injuries that she said that came from a car accident, that came from a car impact and all. And that's what the biomechanical people from ARCA concluded too. And that's what the FBI forensic pathologist concluded too. But I'm going with the state medical examiner because she's already testified in trial too. How does that factor into when you're investigating an accident if the ME says, hey, there's no car strike?
Well, like I said, you got to look at the evidence. You got to look at where the body is. You got to look at the back of his head. You got to figure out how the injury happened to the back of his head. There's obviously blood on the ground. They found some blood, but where was it in relationship to his head? You look at the curbing. They're talking about maybe hitting the curb. Is there tracks in the snow? Is there tracks in the path of where the impact occurred? A vehicle going 24 miles an hour, unless you hit the gas really hard, it's going to take 30, 40 feet for that to occur. And did it happen all in a certain spot? I haven't seen the diagram of the scene of where the blood was, where the
They don't have one. They don't have one.
Yeah, that's the first thing you
They
do.
don't even have where the body is. They don't have where the blood was, where the body. They don't have anything. They don't even take pictures.
That's the worst thing. I mean, we have a dead police officer, which is in my law enforcement profession. Law enforcement officers, dead officers, high profile people, and law enforcement officers are one of the highest profile for officers to investigate their own accidents. They take the highest priority. There's 3 officers there right away. They all should have had either state cameras or city cameras, their own personal camera, take pictures of everything right then and there. The paramedics are there taking care of the victim. They're just kind of looking around and kind of gathering. Everybody has a cell phone. Start snapping pictures. And you look at what did the taillight look like in the snow flurry to cause all this type of commotion. Then you start there. Then you look at the injury. Well, the injury on the arm, like I said, it doesn't look like a taillight would cause that. I mean, I've seen many accidents between 5 miles an hour and 60 miles an hour. And you don't see that type of injury on an arm from a taillight or a lens from a headlight, say, so forth. You'll see some scratches and scrapes, but the body moves in a certain way after impact if it flies far enough and slides far enough. But this is in the snow, on grass. There's a curbing nearby. How did all that happen?
That's one of the questions that have not been answered, in my opinion, in the first trial, and so far not in the second trial. And there's a dog calling for Tubi and Domino. Did you hear that?
What about somebody else wanted us to ask you? What about and when we were at Law and Crime before we decided to start this network, we heard it first, the idea of using a leaf blower to blow away snow and solo cups to collect what they said were blood stains that most of them were never tested.
Well, solo cups collecting blood stains, if you have to, and that's all you got, and it's dissipating real fast, you go grab what you can. They shouldn't have done it that way. They're a police agency. They have investigative. They have evidence, the bags. They know how to do it right. It's a few minutes away to the department, secure the scene, and get it done. It's not melting because it's still cold enough and it's still flurrying. The other part you were talking about,
the leaf blower, yeah, the leaf blower.
That's not a bad idea.
Interesting.
But you got to be really careful that you look at everything first. You start taking pictures of everything. Then you carefully, and I don't know how fast the leaf blower goes because I have one that goes real slow or real fast. Carefully look around the scene. But if you blow the soft snow away and you don't see anything, I'm not saying it's a bad idea. I'm not saying it's the best thing to do. But you got to wait till the storm dissipates. And if you have to, let the snow melt and keep the scene completely secure 2, 3, 4 days, whatever it has to be. Then you collect the blood evidence. But in the meantime, you take pictures and videos of everything, every step of the way.
That's the difference. I mean, that's the difference.
Yeah, too bad that didn't happen. Stephen, we have a situation here where not only is it not cordoned off and protected, but you have continually evolving evidence. On the 3rd of February, the 8th of February, the 10th of February, the 11th of February, the 18th of February. Each of those days, more pieces of taillight surface at the crime scene. What do you do with that?
Well, the funny thing is also, when the officers went to Karen Reed's parents' house in the afternoon, and they say, "Oh, there's the car." Okay, they all have cell phones. They should have looked at the taillight then and taken pictures then. That's ridiculous. I mean, we have a dead police officer focusing on Karen Reed for possible prosecution because they're taking her car. Did she hit him? Did she not hit him? You got to collect the evidence. I do a lot of criminal work. About 10% of my work is criminal, but most of it's civil. But the criminal part is mostly criminal defense. I used to work for the DA's office, and when I was in the Imperial Valley and some in San Diego, I did some work for the DA's office. But they have their own investigators now, so usually the defense attorneys or investigators call me up to do the reconstruction, and I do the high-profile cases like the California Watson murder cases. In California, they have a thing where if somebody dies in an accident and you're under the influence and you've been arrested once before, or you have special knowledge of the dangers of impairment or driving while drunk or under the influence of alcohol and/or drugs, then you can call that a second-degree murder, and it's 15 to life.
Oh, wow.
And it's a big deal. It's a big deal. And I'm getting more and more of those cases, and they're pretty tough to beat. I beat a few of them, but overall, they're somebody's going 60, 70, 80 miles an hour over the speed limit and kill somebody. They've had 2 or 3 priors. There's not much you can do with those, but you still have to work them up and do the best you can. Hopefully you get a judge or a prosecutor that doesn't want to put them in jail for 25 years, but sometimes it happens.
Okay, so one of our producers says, Hank Brennan, the prosecutor, the special prosecutor, said that Karen went 35 feet forward, then reversed 70 feet with the accelerator at 75%. What does all that mean, and how is that?
Okay, I'll use my little calculator.
Okay.
If he goes backwards 70 feet times 30 times reverse is about probably 0.3 Gs. You can probably get 25 miles an hour. So
they're saying what, 24.2 miles an hour? So that's
24.
Consistent.
With those numbers right there, you can get 24, 25 miles per hour. Okay. But because of the only damage to the car is the taillight, the only injuries to the body that would be consistent with somebody getting hit by the forearm. I found a Lexus the other day, and the forearm is about the same height as my forearm. I'm 6'2". I'm about 40 pounds heavier than the victim in this case, but the forearm, but getting hit, and as the other defendant expert said, and what I would look at, as the forearm got hit 24 miles an hour, it's going to pivot your whole body around the car, and you're going to fall to the ground. You're not going to be, you're not going to get that type of injury unless the taillight's already damaged. You may get some superficial scrapes and scratches, but I don't even think you're going to break the taillight.
And what about the body? Where's the? I mean, the body is not propelled forward, backwards, sideways, is it?
No, it's going to be accelerated backwards and then rotate in a counterclockwise rotation and fall to the ground. It's
so how far would it? If the car hits and what, 10 feet back, 6 feet back? No, how far back?
I would say, if the back of the car is coming towards you and it hits your arm, the rest of the body is not making contact. It's not being accelerated by the car. The arm is being accelerated. And as you rotate around, you're going to pivot around it. So you may get a couple feet, 3-4 feet, but you're going to rotate off to the right side of the car and land in the snow somewhere.
Okay. Yeah, it's like the arm absorbs a lot of the impact then.
Well, it'll absorb, but it also, that's the only thing that's being hit. It's being hit. The forearm is being hit, and then you can rotate around and fall to the ground to the right of the car. There's no evidence that the car made any contact with him, like running him over. And whatever's to the right, maybe he hit the fire hydrant. Who knows? With the back of his head. I mean, like I said, I don't know the dynamics of where the evidence is in relationship to the body, the fire hydrant, the curb, the street. I mean, and I don't know if anybody knows.
Yeah, that's the problem. Blessed in Texas, who's was our fields reporter yesterday, had a question. Why not set up heat lamps to melt the snow to reveal ground?
That's not a bad idea. Oh, I was thinking actually getting the fire department there, either with the heat lamps or the fire department, to sprinkle light water to let the snow melt, one way or the other, with water and or heat lamps to look at the whole scene. And if you, I mean, this is a murder with an officer who's dead. All things are not off limits. There's no resources too small, too big to stop an investigation. They focus on Karen, and then obviously something happened where it sure looks like property did something fishy. It really did, especially in the Sally Port. That looks really fishy. I do a lot of video and reenactments and looking at videos and so forth, and me and my investigator. And I don't think I've ever seen an inverted video like that one. They all come in. That has to be specially done with special software. It doesn't come in that way. You have to specially do that.
Yeah, and according to them, that camera always recorded inverted. I mean, that sounds
You
ridiculous.
you're not buying it either. None of us are buying it either.
If it was done and set up that way, and that's what they're saying, then that's how it would happen. But I don't buy it either.
Yeah.
Kay Schmidt gifted 5 Justice Serve TV memberships. Everyone's
Thank
fascinating.
you, Kay Schmidt.
Everyone's fascinating with this this conversation right now, and all. So that is amazing. So what else would you be looking for? Because the defense is saying that those look like those are dog bites from Chloe. You know, the defense hasn't put on their case yet. They're going to. Chloe, the German Shepherd, who was 7 years with the family, then rehomed right after this and had bitten 2 people seriously enough to put them in the hospital. Anything, you know, do you offer any, when you see something like that, do you say, look at something else, look at the dog? Or
well, I would say, you know, that has some characteristics of a dog bite or dog scratches or an animal scratch of some sort. And when I think the last trial, they said there was some pig DNA on his arm. I go,
right.
How does that happen?
Yeah.
There's pig, but no dog. And they got rid of the dog right away. There's something wrong there. It just doesn't match up a tail light or a car vehicle of that type, just on the arm.
Hey, let me ask this. This is just off the top of my head, and because I'm ignorant. So if a dog eats something that has pig DNA on it, and would it transfer then to a wound?
My guess it would. My brilliant brother is a lawyer, DNA guy. Stephen Plourd is a DNA guy. If dogs eat pig ears and stuff like that all the time,
yeah,
and that's one of their treats. And I would think that you're right. Pig DNA may be transferred from his teeth to the arm where it was.
Yeah. Your brother, by the way, is in this chat. He is one. He was a co-counsel with me and Phil Spector. He brilliant, the best DNA person. I learned a lot of things about DNA from him. Okay, because he knew it before anybody knew. He could read the electrophoresis chart. He could actually read the stuff. He could read the test. You know. Unbelievable.
I think I taught him everything he knows. Yeah, I'm 11 months older than him, and we talk almost daily. We talk about cases that he's working on for the last 30 years. I've actually testified for him in trial. It's pretty comical how that came across. But you know, on the Ray Crone case, I walked through that. Case. We walked through that trial for 2 weeks together and looking at all the evidence, and I was heartbroken when I heard that he got a guilty again with that bite mark expert.
But then he exonerated him afterwards.
But later on, the DNA from another individual exonerated him, and that was the best day, one of his best days in his life.
And for those who are watching, look up Ray Crone with the Krone. Stephen Plourd was the leader in getting the forensic odontologist to show that it was bullshit science, okay? Because it wasn't really science. And we had Chris Farrakhan from the Innocence Project on to talk about that, because there's an issue of whether or not the prosecution wanted to go take a bite mark mold of someone they said was Chloe, which is probably not Chloe, to say, see, it doesn't match Chloe. It's just such garbage we're dealing with, like the 1950s. But this is kind of an interesting question. This has to do with you, like as a police officer working with cops. Jaja Kitty, does it surprise you that Brian Albert, who was also a Boston police officer, whose lawn the scene that was found on, did not come out of the house and offer his home as a temporary center for police, but he didn't come out of this house knowing that there's a fellow Boston police officer on his front lawn? Does that surprise you?
To me, that is very surprising. If I, being retired myself, and if something happened to my front lawn, I'd walk out there and say, what can I do? And I'd offer them anything they wanted, unless there's something improper going on. And that's what it really looks like. They didn't come out of the house. The Canton police didn't go inside the house for a period of time and didn't check things out. That's just very surprising, very surprising.
Okay. So let me give you some other questions that we have going on to making a count. Do you feel the Lexus would alert or record Karen Reed grazing John O'Keefe's headlight, or God forbid a human within the black box or something like that? In other words, should the Lexus have recorded that impact, I guess is what is being asked, at the house of his car, of the Traverse?
Well, there wouldn't have been enough of a change in velocity to the Lexus to probably even open the black box or wake it up. If it just hit the arm and spun it around, you probably wouldn't even, the car probably wouldn't even sense it. Going over a speed bump, it may open it up, but this would not.
What about hitting the traverse at the house when she backed in? Would that open the black box up? Would that wake it up?
That might, and I think that Burgess should have, or somebody should have looked at the tech stream data or the traverse to look at what, because the traverse will have no data because it's off, but the Lexus hit and bumped, it might be enough to wake it up. And there should be something on the tech stream data or the navigation system, and that was never looked at as far as I know. If it was never brought up. But it was only a short period of time before that.
Right. So another question. Our chat is filled with questions to you. Ms. Holmes 66. If Karen Reed did 24 miles an hour, how did she not hit anything else, backing up 24 miles an hour?
Right, and that's a question of where the 24 miles an hour and the path of that 70 feet took place, not knowing where the path was going forward and going backwards, the 3-point turn, the diagrams. They have some Google Maps up there and showing where the 3-point turn was, but it's not a properly documented scene. And within a few days, the snow started to melt. They should have repositioned everything, but again, it's hard to do without photographs in the initial. And they just botched this investigation up from the very, very beginning.
Yeah. One other question. I see you, says Stephen. Have you ever gone backwards at 24 miles an hour at night, drunk or sober? I don't know if I should have you answer that. Maybe you should take the Fifth Amendment.
Yeah, I've gone backwards 24 miles an hour, and it's difficult to do. Mm-hmm. Either looking over your shoulder or backing up the mirror. If you know what you're doing, you have it on a straight roadway, you can do it. But 24 miles an hour, 70 feet, that's a pretty good distance. And you probably should have seen something, because if you're going 24 miles an hour, at the end of that 24 miles, you still have to come to a stop. And that's one of the things that wasn't brought up. You go backwards for 70 feet, go 24 miles an hour, which calculations show you can do it if you accelerate properly. But then the vehicle keeps on going. We're in the front yard of somebody's house. There's trees. There's a fire hydrant. I don't know what else is in the area. But since we don't have all that documented properly or at all, then you really can't tell. There's other things in the path. The house is going to be close by. Other trees are there. Whatever else is there is there.
Montana Lil, what body position would Mr. O'Keefe have to have been in to cause the injuries he had? I don't know if you can answer that.
Well, he has lacerations on his arm. If his arm was stretched out to the point where it hit the taillight and he spun around and he fell backwards and he hit something really hard, not snow, not grass, to cause a 1.5 inch, 2 inch laceration. But he has to hit something hard. Hitting the snow, even though the car is doing 24, he's only doing a few miles an hour and just kind of falls backwards. He doesn't get propelled backwards at 24 miles an hour that hits the ground. That's ludicrous, based upon the damage. Then he's got some type of a cut in his eye and a
laceration over his eye. Yeah.
And then when I think Karen said something in that video, she testified that she pulled a piece of glass out of his cheek and it started bleeding. And one person said the heart had to be beating at that point in time. Well, if he got hit at 12:30 at night, he's unconscious, and it's 20 degrees, 25 degrees, whatever, how could his heart be beating at 5:30, 6 o'clock in the morning still? I think he'd be dead. Had it happened much later than that, the 2:30, 3 o'clock, that data from the other lady's cell phone is just, there's something wrong, especially when you get it deleted and so forth. But you'll find an expert to do and come up with an answer of whatever you want.
Yeah, well, we saw that yesterday.
I saw that with Burgess.
Burgess my understanding is Burgess is a decent guy. He knows what he's doing, but he made so many mistakes, not correcting his own reports. Having his CV out there, knowing this is a very, very high profile case. Every stone's going to be turned upside down, especially if I was an expert, I'd be very careful. If nothing else, I'd tell the DA's office, ask me these questions about my CV ahead of time so I take the fire out.
No, I don't think they could. And you couldn't follow them. What does Mr. Plourd think, Tom Gully's show, of being a police officer? At least asking to interview the people in the house or search the house. There's a dead body on the lawn. What do you think of that? Just generically having worked with police.
You have to do that. You have a dead body on the lawn. And especially at some point in time, they knew within a short period of time that some of the witnesses, Miss McCabe was at the scene at 6 o'clock in the morning. She said she was in the house at 2:30 or 2 o'clock when they left there. He was tied to the house. They're all tied to the house. You got to go inside, not necessarily look at everything for physical evidence, but you would have a keen eye and you look for things as you go inside. You do a Columbo. You walk in the house, talk to witnesses, and you look, oh, what's down this stair? What's up this stair? Do you see anything that looks unshuffled? Something wrong? And you do. Then you start getting asking more questions. But they didn't do that. So I don't know. Were they protecting him? I don't know. But it's really suspicious. There's something, in my opinion, something wrong.
Dante in Canada, a donation asks, backing up at that speed, I would have left tire marks in the grass for months. I'm from northern Quebec, and I have done it with 4 feet of snow.
Well, this vehicle has traction control devices, so it's not going to spin the tires. Will it accelerate to 24 miles an hour and not spin the tires? Probably. In the grass, if it was on grass, and I don't even know if it's on grass, if she's accelerating backwards. We don't know that.
No, and that's one of the things that is so unclear. You know, we've had the discussions about a second 3-point turn, and is the argument that she began that turn so that her vehicle is now perpendicular to the curb as opposed to parallel to it and backed up in that direction 24.2 miles an hour. That's the only time really the grass might come into play, if she were then to hit Officer John O'Keefe and continue on to the lawn. If she's parallel to the property, then the lawn would never be a factor. But you're exactly right. I don't know what the hell happened. I have no idea what the vehicle was doing, what she was doing, if anything, and where Officer John O'Keefe was in the mix. None.
Sure.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Linda M., with the airbags, an interesting question. I've seen it would go off after backing up at 24 miles an hour.
These airbags are front or side impacts. This is a rear impact. There'd be no airbags deployed. There may be a change in velocity if it hits something hard enough and cause a deceleration of the vehicle. That might wake up the black box, might trigger something in the TSS, the Toyota Sensing System, a Lexus Sensing System. But in this case, the airbags would not go off.
Micah asks, Burgess was showing data from 7 different sources to get the time of the Lexus events. My question, wouldn't a triggering event cause the CAN-BUS to take readings from all the sensors? I don't even know what the CAN-BUS is. Perhaps you do, Stephen.
Well, there's all kinds of sensors in all these vehicles nowadays. And Lexus is a high-performance Toyota with a lot of new equipment in it. It's got a lot of sensors and data absorbing sensors in there that will gather information. And it's unbelievable. Like Borla, who's they have a navigational system software that will track the vehicles. And I'm working on cases now. That's really high profile, sophisticated equipment, very delicate, will handle certain things, will unravel certain things. Sometimes it's not correct. And when you're talking about GPS data and so forth, which we are, depending on how many satellites, the weather, the storm could change the speed or the timing and the location. It's not all rocket scientists. It's not exact. It's close, but with conditions like this in a residential area, and we don't know how many satellites are. You need anywhere between 4 and 7 satellites to properly track a vehicle correctly, and you just don't know at this time. I don't trust it altogether, but that's what it would be.
Bev's Broomstick, his total body weight was 210 pounds. He was allegedly clipped on his 10-pound arm. Imagine a 10-pound doggy pulling a 200-pound 10 yards into the lawn. Impossible. I'm leaving that up for you to interpret.
Well, a dog pulling his arm for 10 yards?
Mm-hmm. Yes.
That's 30 feet. and it would be almost impossible.
Okay.
But the point is, he's going to be hitting the arm, rotating the body, because the rest of the body was not contacted. The torso, the chest, the knees were not contacted, but he did fall back. There's evidence there. Is there a fight or some altercation? Something happened with the arm? It's a number of things. They're not just one thing. There's something that's going on that's just doesn't make sense.
That's interesting. Somebody, the World's on Fire wants to know, and Michael Bryan, you can answer this. Did Massachusetts State Police or CPD, Canton Police Department, check the fire hydrant or flagpole for any blood or tissue?
No, there was no swabbing. No, none of that happened. And it was interesting today with Dr. Wolf, brain surgeon Wolf, that he made a point of it, both when being asked and offering on his own, that it was unlikely any sort of ridge would have caused that laceration. Obviously anticipating the defense is going to suggest, maybe fell backwards on a counter or something with a ridge that would have caused that. Again, that was one of the absolutes I think the doctor used that paints him in a corner and makes him look unreasonable. You can't talk in those kind of absolutes. How does he know there was no ridge involved?
And he doesn't. He has no clue, because there's no evidence of it one way or the other. To get a laceration 1.5 to 2 inches long, I haven't seen a picture of the laceration. As I understand, was he bald?
No,
he had hair there, but thinning.
I mean, you'd have to look at it, and because I've seen a lot of lacerations. I've had lacerations on my own body. My knees got a laceration, and it didn't bang up the underlying bone, but it just tore the knee apart for about 1.5 inches. And it looks, my guess is probably going to look like what his head did. But I was going at a relatively high speed when I fell off my motorcycle, and that happened, not a couple miles an hour. And not grass or snow.
Anything else you see that we haven't talked to you about? Because this has been the most interesting conversation. I think confirms what all of us say. There's something not right in Denmark or whatever that was. Something
rotten in Denmark, Shakespeare said. Yeah.
As I sit here, I can't think of anything offhand, but I can't wait to hear Judd Welcher. He's a PhD. I've known him for over 20 years. He was bought out by Aperture 2-3 years ago. He had a good business. He does a lot of testing. I've actually testified with him and against him in trial. And he's a formidable expert. He knows what he's doing. But to explain some of the things that I see, because I've testified in biomechanics and injury analysis. I'm not an expert. I'm not a biomechanical engineer. But there's certain things that just don't make sense.
Yep.
It's a pretty honest assessment.
That's the bottom line.
It's the bottom line. And in the criminal system and the judicial system, has to be a reasonable doubt, and I don't think you have reasonable doubt, because the way the evidence was gathered, or lack of evidence gathered, nothing's gathered or documented properly. But my wife was he wearing the jacket? Linda, my wife, Marriott, who you've met, we've met a couple times.
Yes, we have. Yes.
And at some of these forensic conferences, she said to hello. Was he wearing a jacket? I guess he was wearing a sweatshirt at the time.
Right. Like a hoodie, yeah.
And how could the taillight lens fracture as much as it did through the sweater and cause those types of scrapes and abrasions? It just doesn't make sense. Just doesn't make sense. And the other question would be, if he's wearing a sweatshirt, how could the dog get through the sweatshirt without tearing it up? Also, these are questions I just like to put out there, and we don't know the answers to those.
Yeah,
this has been great,
yeah.
Stephen. I hope we can call on you again. I know we told you a half an hour, and we've taken 40 minutes of your time.
We've been known to do that.
I figured half hour to an hour, so I don't care. It's a good learning experience. I've only been on a few podcasts, but I've testified in over 700 trials.
Holy moly. Wow.
Yeah, 500 depositions. 36 or 37 years as an expert. First time was May of 1985. I'm pushing 40 years this is May. May 25th is be 40 years testifying as an expert in the courts as an expert in Reconstruction. I remember.
Unlike Mr. Burgess, who has 4 on his CV over an 8-year period and 2 were accident reconstruction, which he now says he's not qualified to testify to. So I compare the two of you.
I
give
get
you
the feeling
real
if they
crackdown.
found Stephen, they would have passed and moved on to somebody else that they could maybe massage a little better with the facts that they were going to use. So
Yeah.
Right, but from the beginning to where we are now, there's just something wrong.